you've had the chance to take a look at some of the big shakers and movers here at the Geneva Motor Show, and we've got Chris Bangle now with us, who you've had on the program before too, to talk about some of the big launches and the big debuts. So, Chris, typical cliched question to start things off. Your favorite design at the show?
You know, I don't like questions like that. You know, the best in show.
Most cliched one.
I think the best in show is behind us. It's over here. It's the Rolls-Royce Wraith. The Ferrari, La Ferrari. The Ferrari is a close second. They have different jobs to do. You know, the Ferrari has to fulfill expectations, and this one has to break them because it's showing a sportive side to Rolls-Royce, which most people don't realize the brand has, which it does.
Or should have, yeah.
Well, it does. It does. I mean, from the Ghost on, the original silver Ghost on, which was a racing car, basically, it's always had a very sportive heritage in it that Bentley kind of usurped.
Let's
for
not go there.
We don't have to go there. But those two cars stand out to me in the show.
I have to get the other cliched one out of the way, which is the new 3 Series GT.
It's cool. It's nice. I like it. It's definitely got an easier sense of proportion to work with all that kind of emotion than, let's say, the car I drive a 5 GT. I mean, you know, disclaimer. You know, I did used to work for that company, but those cars.
And you had something to do with that design.
Yeah, well, that one, yeah, but that one comes after my time.
Yeah.
But the young designer on it, Paige Bierman, he's a particular favorite of mine. So I'm very happy to see him have success.
He's got the right ideas. The last time we met, we spoke about how this, there's this big sort of obsession that seems to be taking over at each brand on the crossover and the compact SUV. You see a little bit of a progression of that idea this time with the Renault Captur, but on the whole, where do you see that going? Because they're starting to look more and more car-like and less SUV-like.
Well, you can see there's
merging?
Yeah, you can see there's more attention to the cariness of it. At this show, probably one of the cariness things that's most significant is this Chorus over there, and it's not trying to be anything other than just a vanilla car, right? But do it very competently. And maybe some of the brands are saying, okay, we have to be a little bit careful about this, overdoing this SUV-ness, because it in itself becomes a niche. And you know, every generation, they say, hates to drive the cars their mom drove. And if mom drove an SUV, then they got to drive something else.
Yeah. Oh, but no, the reason I asked you that is also because, you're starting to see this almost MPV-like, or I mean, that's what they like to call it in Europe anyway.
Yeah.
Vehicles which are essentially now looking more and more like slightly taller hatchbacks rather than crossover or SUV. I mean, does it necessarily have to have that coupe line to be called crossover anymore?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, for sure. And maybe these things have been so blended and so mixed by now, it's almost impossible to discuss it at all rationally with a term like that, which is a little bit sad, that we lack vocabulary. But it's, in general, car design is a culture that lacks vocabulary. So it'd be nice to find some new terms, some new inventions. Maybe that's what I'm missing at the show. I'm missing that sense of, here we have a new category, here we have a new definition.
Something that really stands out.
Yeah.
But the other thing that, at least this is my observation, in the past when you looked at certain brands, you could sort of look at them and you knew where they came from. There was a certain culture or cultural essence to that design form. That's no longer true either.
Well, you don't find that by Citroën? Come on.
All right.
They come from
Barring the
Chromeville,
French.
obviously. They come from the land of chrome. What do you want?
Oh, Citroën is an extreme example, but you know what I mean, like the Asians especially, there used to be this thing about, the Korean cars looked a certain way, the Japanese cars looked is it all just getting too ubiquitous now?
Well, without a doubt. I mean,
the Italians are still Italian enough, I think, but to
I
some
wish.
extent.
I
No?
wish. No way.
What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, brands that used to be a little bit, not hysterical, but let's just call it over-enthusiastic, like maybe Hyundai and Kia, they brought on really professional teams, they bring in Europeans as well, and the whole thing gets like settled down, and now we're professional and we know what we're doing, and so the brands look like they're maturing and they work hard on creating an individual identity. I think the Kia front end does that for them quite nicely. Whereas the companies that have been around for a long time, to me, they look like they're missing a a vision of where they want to go. I mean, sorry, but if I look at Volkswagen up there and I'm trying to understand how that brand is evolving and why it's different than the Audis and why it's different than the Skodas and all that kind of stuff, I'm not really seeing that as I would have liked to. Let's put it that way. And you mentioned the Italians. And I don't know, you know, except for some outliers, you know, Ferraris, let's leave that on the side, and a Maserati here and there, or a Lamborghini. If you look at what's happening in Fiat, what do you got? You've got a Cinquecento and nothing else, right? Rebadging Chryslers. What's
That's
that?
not Italian, for sure. Which then leads
This is,
me
of
to...
course, only going to be shown in India, right?
It is only going to be shown in India and maybe in Turin.
Uh-oh.
All right. No, but jokes apart, the Indian side of things, it's one industry which is, of course, still very much developing, but there's never been such a thing as Indian design or an Indian identity or Indianness to a particular look that emanates out of that market.
Except for the trucks.
But but I'm talking now, of course, of passenger cars and passenger vehicles, let's say. But Tata Motors, Mahindra, I mean, you've seen the kind of stuff they've been doing. Should they be developing that sort of an identity more strongly?
Yeah, without a doubt. Every company wants to do that, should do that. The two companies you mentioned, Mahindra, Tata, of course, struggle with this idea, how can we be accepted in the world arena as professional and serious, and at the same time, how can we show that we're not just kowtowing to other people's ideas of taste and applying, you know, hitting everything with the Audi stick or, you know, that kind of thing. So they have challenges in front of them, and my hope is that they're able to distill their very, very strong, very, very deep national culture into more and more things that the whole world says, gosh, I wish we were doing that too. And you know, they can. There's still lots of room for that.
But given the way
I don't think the story's over at all.
No, but given the way that car companies usually work, in the case of Tata Motors, there is now Jaguar Land Rover to sort of look towards, if you know what I mean, for inspiration. And in the case of Mahindra, there's SsangYong, which...
Let's look somewhere else.
Which is a whole different cup of tea again.
Yeah.
Is that then a worry that, you know, it might be too much of an influence coming in from these external sources in that bid to try and be more global?
I mean, I've had a chance to talk with some of the people at the tops of both of those companies, and my hope is that that type of a future lies in the personalities involved. In which case, there's a good chance. I mean, they're serious people. They're very, very awake, very, very in tune to the dangers of influences. But at the same time, they've got to make all these things work, right? So you've got to make a Jaguar and a Land Rover work. I'm not overly convinced that by making a Jaguar for every person pocketbook is the right way to do it, but they seem to think you can go after it like that. Mahindra's made super strong statements with SUVs in their home market. We've got super good reactions. Now it remains to see if they can take on that, capitalize on that, improve on where they feel they can make more of a statement, and not lose a bit of that wonderful homegrownness.
Yeah, that's true.
So once again, I think as opposed to the Chinese, okay, who pretty much blew it in terms of being able to establish a Chinese character other than cheap and gaudy. And now what they're doing is saying, well, look, we can be just as European as the Europeans, given the chance for a lot less money. I think there's still in India... By
hiring the European designers
right. I think in India there's still a very good possibility that the Indian designers, and there's a lot of damn good designers in India, right? The Indian designers are going to make their own statement and still, you know, continue making their own statement.
All right, so one last point then. It's been a depressed market for some time here in Europe. India is looking pretty depressed now as well as sales go. But despite all of that, what's that one big idea you're looking towards? What are we going to expect over the next few months?
Well,
Big vision time.
What, from me or from this industry?
No, from the industry. What do you think we should look forward to?
Well,
or what would you hope to see?
To be quite honest, what I'm missing is an understanding of the relationship between a person and a car, which is evolving, is being acknowledged by these companies. You will see on these stands here more cars from the past being put on the stands as references for their future than I've ever seen before. And we're not talking about retro design.
Yeah.
It's a theme. Okay, one of the things you have to admit, they expanded this hall by X square meters and they had to fill it somehow, so they decided to do it out of their parking lots. Fine, right? Which is okay. But the fact is, the people, I think in general, expect leadership companies to show leadership and show where this whole game is going. And where this is going is not going to be the nth reiteration of where they've already been. It's got to go into a world which has a different context for cars. Young people expect cars to work for them differently. We're not understanding what shared vehicles are in our future. The move towards autonomous driving vehicles is gaining momentum with every day. Right? I went out and saw the guys out in Google just to see how they're doing it out there. This is an unstoppable phenomenon. I would like these people to get ahead of the game. Yesterday I saw some student work. It was very nicely done at the competition done by CDN on seats of the future. What's a car seat if you don't have to drive a car? Interesting concept. So some student work is being done in there, but the idea that a company has encapsulated their future and they're showing us a piece of it now, other than, well, look, it's got an electric drivetrain, whoop-de-weep, you know, it's not happening. It will.
Who's close to it? Who do you think is close to it?
Hard to say. Hard to say, really. Hard to say. The guys who are serious about electric cars are trying to make the electric cars either fit into, identical to a sports car you've already seen, by the way, but different.
Guess what? It's also electric, yeah.
Yeah, it's also electric, so it becomes sort of like this added excuse. But honey, it's also electric, you know? Right. And the other ones go into this, like, we're making a cube and we're ignoring anything that has to do with design at all because it's a product, right? Is that the only way forward? Is that where emotions are going to wind up? That's how it's going to keep people passionate about this industry? I mean, people put money into this industry because they're passionate about it. But I don't know. That I'd like to see.
Yeah, but we can hope.
Yeah.
We can hope.
I hope so.
Thank you. Good to see you as always.
Take care. Take care. Bring some passion back.